morning from the ENCA Money Desk. Now, amid high inflation, interest rates and unemployment, many South Africans are looking to the medium-term budget policy statement for some form of support. Now, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will deliver his speech on 1 November. For more on what we could expect, let's bring in Frank Blackmore, the lead economist at KPMG. Frank, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, spending cuts will be necessary. What do you think could be announced in the statement?
Yeah, I think it's important for us. Most of the analysts are going to be watching where those cuts are going to take place. Is it for things where we should be cutting? So over the last X number of budget cycles, we've looked at things like the public wage bill. We've looked at things like expenditure on capital infrastructure. We've looked at things like service delivery amongst the different sectors. And obviously, some of those areas are more vital to the citizens of the country than others. And therefore, most of us will be looking where those cuts will be made. And I guess we won't know until the budget comes out what actually will materialize.
Now, Eskom will also definitely feature in the speech. What update can we possibly expect?
I think the last time we heard, we heard about the whole debt transfer issue over to general government. How is that process working? What is yet to happen there? Because we know that removing some of that debt off the books of Eskom will lift a large burden on their balance sheet and allow them to then increase their expenditure on both maintenance and fixing capital infrastructure, as well as one of the conditions of that sort of loan, of the debt transfer was to expand both the distribution network as well as the transmission network. And we know that is vital, given the number of sort of private projects that are coming up that need to connect to the grid. So we won't overcome load shedding without that additional transmission and distribution systems coming online. And therefore, I think those will be the main aspects: what's happening to the debt and what's happening to the infrastructure side.
Another priority, or a priority for us to find out more about, would be the national health insurance. What type of information can we expect here?
Yeah, I think we've heard a lot of leaks from government over recent weeks about how there has been a revenue shortfall that is expected. And will they pursue projects such as the NHI, even though they don't have the revenue to pay for these for such a project? Or will they just focus on I would recommend they rather look at the current system and trying to implement improvements to that system, and sort of leave the NHI plans for a later stage when the fiscus looks slightly better.
Now, to be able to afford all these things, could we as taxpayers expect a hike in our taxes to be announced?
Yeah, I think this is probably the most controversial. I mean, I guess at every budget cycle we say is a difficult budget cycle because there always seems to be too little money to go around. But if we I think context matters for this budget. The average South African is going through a cost of living crisis brought about by high inflation, high interest rates. Prices are rising everywhere. And around them, they are surrounded by evidence of government failures. So infrastructure that isn't working, load shedding, which we've lived with for the last 17 years. We know water is now under pressure, transport infrastructure. And so it will be pretty callous of a government to increase taxes and additional pressure on those same citizens during a time such as this, whereas they had the austerity type of movements, levers that they could pull as well in the budget. So I'm hoping they go for a more austere budget, given the fiscal situation this year, and it sort of don't put additional pressures on the citizens.
Thank you so much for your time this morning, Frank. That was Frank Blackmore, the lead economist at KPMG. Now,